Yeah, that one. Okay, we're on.
Beautiful. Well, welcome everyone who's either live with us tonight or watching the replay. I'm really happy to introduce you to Solala Towler. Solala has been a friend of mine. I met him when we went to China 2 years ago and had just a wonderful adventure there. He was one of the leaders of our group. And each day we got to talk about Taoist philosophy, and he shared the lovely process of serving pu'er tea while we were in China, and also took us and introduced us to some other teas. But tonight, Solala is going to share with us some of his Tao Te Ching book. And for those of you who've been in class with me before, I did a whole series where we did all 81 steps of the Tao Te Ching. And tonight he's going to go a little bit deeper into that, and he's going to be starting a series which he's going to tell you about later. So thank you, Solala, and welcome everyone.
Okay, welcome. Well, Tao Te Ching and this project of writing this book was the most challenging book project I've ever done. I've written like 14 books. So this was the most challenging and the most rewarding in a lot of ways too. And I had this idea that there are many, many, many translations of Tao Te Ching out, many of which have little or nothing to do with the actual Tao Te Ching, that are people just put on their own sort of new age ideas and call it Tao Te Ching. So I'm very snooty about Tao Te Ching being at least connected to the original text. And then I had this idea that since Tao Te Ching, if you understand it in the way that it's meant to be understood, I believe, as not just a book of philosophy, but a manual for self-cultivation. So I wanted to bring out those Taoist aspects of each chapter so that people can see how they can apply these things to their life and to their meditation and Qigong practice. That it's not just a book of philosophy that you read and then you're done with it and you move on to another book. And then I decided, well, why not actually put the practice in each one? And I was working with a company called Sounds True, and I had done one book for them already. And so when I brought this one up to the acquisitions editor, she thought it was a great idea. And so we started this book, and I just went full bore on it and finished it in about 3 months. And it's been doing pretty well. You know, I checked the other day and it sold about 6,000 copies. So it's not like a romance novel or a crime thriller that sells hundreds of thousands of copies. But many people have been touched by this book, and many people have shared that with me, which really makes me feel really good. So I'm very excited about doing this course. I've been wanting to do an online course like this for years, but I had no idea how to even start. And it wasn't until I was in a conversation with Leslie recently where she said, oh, I know how to do that. I'll help you do that. And so it's been really, really exciting. I'm really excited that I get to do this now in my comfortable home and send that out over CyberDAO to everyone who is either with us in person or is able to access the video through YouTube. So, Tao Te Ching. There's a tricky part about, and some of this stuff I'll be saying again when I actually start the class, but this is sort of an intro to the intro of the class. And there, originally when people in the West wanted to, it's a little strange because I'm looking at myself speaking on the screen. When people in the West wanted to translate or translitterize the characters, Chinese characters, that they don't use letters, they use characters. And some of the characters are built out of other smaller characters. And some of them have many, many lines or strokes. And so they wanted to use a Western alphabet to be able to transliterate or translate these characters. So they came up with this system called the Wei Jiao system, which I'm not a fan of, and it doesn't make any sense. And so when you notice when the book says, is this showing backwards on your screen?
No.
Okay,
no.
My screen it is. Tao Te Ching, Tao spelled with a T, which makes no sense unless you knew already that when you see a T, that you pronounce it as a D. and CH is pronounced as a J. So it's the Jing. Just like Tai Chi, um, Tai is spelled Tai, and then CHI, where people do Tai Chi, is actually pronounced JIG. It has nothing to do with the character for Chi, it's a different character. And so I wanted, nowadays they have something called a pinyin system, and they spell it with a D, Dao De with a D and Jing with a J. But my publisher said everybody's used to this, so we want to do it this way. And I would like to educate people and use it the other way. And even pinyin is not perfect because qigong, you know, we have the word qi, Qi, which people have no idea how to pronounce that either. They think it's qui gong or something. Tao, the character Tao, means the way, the source. It means a path. It means walking on that path. And it also means the one who walks on that path. So it's really a vast, vast meaning in that word. De, which is often mistranslated, usually mistranslated as virtue, actually means something like spiritual potency or spiritual power. You see, that has a very different feeling than this idea of a Confucian version of virtue, of being nice to people and being virtuous. It does mean that, but it also means in a much higher level, this idea of spiritual power. And people develop their de, and also people, it is believed that there is a lot of de in nature, and especially in mountains, which is why in China and Japan, spiritual seekers have always gone into the mountains. And I know Leslie lives in the mountains, so she's picking up on a lot of good there. Jing just means classic book, a classic book. So I Ching is another classic book that we'll talk about at some point on the way. So Tao Te Ching was written 2,500 years ago in the Zhou dynasty, at the end of the Zhou dynasty, actually, as the Zhou dynasty was falling apart and China was entering what we call the warring states period. In ancient China, we think of China as this vast country, but in ancient times, China was actually a number of different countries, a number of different kingdoms. And it wasn't until the first Chinese emperor took over all the other countries and combined them into one. And it was the Qin dynasty, which is where we get the word China. In China, they call their country Zhongguo, which means the middle kingdom. So they don't refer to their country as China. As a matter of fact, our country they call Meiguo, which is the beautiful country, which is kind of nice. So when we go over there and they want to know where are you guys from, we say, well, Meiguo, and I'm a beautiful country person, which is kind of nice. And so Lao Tzu, the author of Tao Te Ching, was working in the capital of the Zhou dynasty. He was in charge of the royal archives, meaning he was in charge of the vast library of all the books of history, philosophy, magic, things that had been written up to that time. In ancient times, they didn't write on paper either. They wrote on little slats of bamboo, which were tied together with string and then rolled up. So when you would read a book, of course, Chinese start from the right to left, and then you would unroll the book as you went along. And Tao Te Ching was written like that. And a lot of Tao Te Ching actually comes from a shamanic oral culture, which is something that not a lot of people talk about. My friend Wu Zhengshan, a few people talk about the Wu shaman tradition, the Wu shaman culture was prevalent in China as it was all over the world, right? Shamanic culture is a basis for a lot of our religions, our spiritual practices. And so Lao Tzu was very tuned into that, and he would go out and visit with these people and sit with these people. And in many primitive, so-called primitive cultures, tribal cultures, it comes from an oral tradition, right? The stories, the teachings are shared orally. They're not written down. As a matter of fact, it is believed by many native cultures that writing it down imprisons the stories, imprisons the teachings. Because when it's an oral tradition, every time you tell the story, you tell it a little differently. and people hear it a little differently. Once you start writing it down, like when the first anthropologists started meeting with Native American elders in this country, they wanted to write all the stories down and put it in books. And a lot of the Native people didn't like that idea at all, because then the stories were imprisoned. And so the interesting thing about the Tao Te Ching is it's one of the only like spiritual books that was written under duress, meaning Lao Tzu worked at the Zhou dynasty. Society was starting to fall apart. He could see the writing on the wall. He decided to leave his job, his cushy job in the Royal Archives, and take off for the Western frontier. So most times we see paintings and pictures of Lao Tzu riding a buffalo, and probably he was actually in a cart that was pulled by a buffalo, because people didn't really ride buffaloes, water buffaloes, for long journeys of hundreds and hundreds of miles. So in any case, he got in his cart, he started going off to the wilderness, and at the last place there was a gateway between civilization and wilderness. And the gatekeeper had been a student of Lao Tzu when he lived in the capital of the Zhou dynasty. And the story is that a few days before Lao Tzu arrived, Yin Shi was up on this guard tower overlooking the plains, and he saw a purple cloud coming his way. And so he knew by that there was a high spiritual being on his way to him. So he got really excited to see who it was going to be. And when Lao Tzu arrived, he was very happy to see him. He didn't understand why he was leaving his cushy job in the capital and going off into the wilderness, which is where the barbarians lived, where the tribal peoples lived, where civilization ended. Why would he go there? But Lao Tzu was ready to drop out of society. And so Yin Shi begged him to write some of his teachings down, because Lao Tzu comes from this oral culture. He has one foot in the writing culture as the keeper of the archives, and one foot in the oral culture of the Wu, of the shaman, of the tribal people. And so he resisted that. He didn't want to write it down, because then again, there's that thing of capturing and imprisoning the words, the teachings on the paper, or in this case on the strips of bamboo. And supposedly it took a couple days for Yin Shi to break him down so that he will write it. And then the story is that one night he stayed up all night and he wrote a very short book. It's only 5,000 characters. It's one of the shortest, if not the shortest, of the great spiritual classic texts. And then went off to the wilderness and was never seen again. So I love this story. Scholars, especially Western scholars, argue about that this is a story, that there was no guy named Lao Tzu. The book was written by a number of different people. But to me, whether it's true or not, the book, the magic of the book, the teachings of the book, the power of the book is there, whether you believe in the story or not. But I choose to believe in the story because it gives me pleasure, and I think it enhances the whole experience of this book. Know what I'm saying? Oh, that's right, you're all muted. And so this book has come down to us for 2,500 years. And after the Bible, it's the most widely translated book in the world. So it's been a bestseller for 2,500 years. And I feel that it is so valuable. The teachings in this book, the inspiration, the education, are so valuable in this book that we can apply it to our 21st century living just as well as people did back in the day when it was written 2,500 years ago. And so that's what excites me about this. That's what excites me about this whole Taoist path that I've been on for 28 years now. I've always been interested in Eastern mysticism. I started studying it when I was a young lad. Starting in 1968, I started studying Zen and also Hindu yoga and meditation. There wasn't really any Taoism around where I lived anyway, in Boston in the 1960s. And so I've been very interested in, and before I really found my home in Taoism, I was practicing Zen Buddhist meditation with a Zen teacher here in Eugene. But for me, there was a rigidity in the Japanese version of Zen that I was a little uncomfortable with. And once I discovered Taoism, I found that all the things that I love the most about Zen actually come from Taoism, because Zen is a Taoist form of Buddhism. Started in China as Chan Buddhism and moved to Japan as Zen. All this idea of being simple, of being in the moment, of using paradoxical stories to teach, of being natural, of this idea of wabi sabi, really identifying and loving things that are not perfect, that are worn and a little irregular. All that comes from Taoism. You know, Buddhism came to China from India as Mahayana Buddhism and got kind of mixed up with Taoism. It became this form of Buddhism called Chan Buddhism. And so I was studying Zen. I was in a used bookstore in Portland, Oregon, and found a book by this fellow who became my Taoist teacher all these years later, named Hua Qing Ni, N-I, Huaching-Ni, who's now 101 and lives down in Southern California. And he has many, many books out, and his books are all just great. And he became my teacher, and I don't see him, I haven't seen him in probably 15 years, but it really doesn't matter, because what I've learned from him and from his books and the small amount of time I spent with him has helped me through so many difficult times in my life. You know, since there are so few of us, if people do want to break in with a question at any point, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I want to invite you to do that. So I know that you all, all two of you, or everyone who is viewing this video later, have some experience with this and have some resonance with this. I mean, Lao Tzu, the other interesting thing is that Lao Tzu was not actually the fellow's name. Lao Dan was his actual name. Lao Tzu, the character Tzu, means like master or teacher. Tzu is like a 3 with a line through it. And interestingly enough, it means master or teacher, or it also means child. So it's kind of like when they talk in the Bible about becoming a child to enter the kingdom. And Lao Tzu talks a lot about being a child in his book. One of my favorite chapters in Tao Te Ching at the end says, the sage, she returns people to their childlike hearts. Is it one of the great lines? And so sometimes people use his name, Lao Tzu, is translated as the old teacher, but sometimes it's translated as the old boy or the old child, which I think is very interesting. So part of this whole, my approach to Taoism, I call myself a scholar with a small s. I read a lot of scholarly books about Taoism, but the way I teach and the way I experience Taoism is not in a scholarly, with a giant S way. Matter of fact, I just want to quote from a little article I wrote about a year or so ago called "Do You Believe in Magic?" I was driving today and saw a bumper sticker in front of me that said, "I break for elves and unicorns." It made me chuckle, and it also made me think. I like the idea of being open to magic, miracles, and wonder. Lao Tzu said something like, when people lose their sense of awe, Tao itself is lost. Or perhaps you could say, when people lose their sense of magic, they are lost. Lao Tzu says we need to become as children to enter Tao. What does he mean by this? Perhaps that a childlike sense of awe and magic is what we need to get us through the hard times as well as the good ones. Perhaps we need to remain open to miracles, the miracles of daily life as well as the once-in-a-lifetime ones. How can we become living embodiments of Tao? You know, one of my teachers, Leslie might know, Tung Liang El Huang, he talks a lot about expressing your own Tao. You know, Taoism is not something that you join and then you have to follow a certain way and you have to express yourself a certain way and you have to dress a certain way and eat a certain way. The real magic, the real best way is to express your own Tao. You know, and some people's Tao is doing Qigong and Tai Chi. Some people's Tao is being a nurse and holding people's hands in a hospice situation where they're transitioning. Some people's Tao may be to make the best bread you ever tasted or the best pizza you've ever had. Some people's Tao may be teaching Qigong, maybe teaching horticultural, maybe gardeners. You know, it's all about the way to find your magic and to connect with that and be able to share that and express that with others. Does that make sense? Zhuangzi, after Lao Tzu, the most important of the ancient Taoist teachers is Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi says, words are not just blowing wind, they have meaning. But if we cannot agree on what they mean, are we really saying anything? People think their words are more meaningful than the peeping of birds, yet are they really any different? Tao is hidden behind partial understanding, and the meaning of our words is hidden behind a screen of flowery rhetoric. So, how can we get beyond words, beyond flowery rhetoric? How can we become living embodiments of Tao? How can we remain open to the miracle of life and death and all that lies between? How can we not lose sight of the wondrous, the magical, and the sublime? How can we wake up more and more, deeper and deeper, vaster and vaster? How can we not lose sight of the amazing experience of students of the way, in general, in particular? The way is another translation of Tao. By practicing, by going deep within, by meditating, by dwelling in the silence, by applying the words of Lao Tzu, Zhuangzi, and all the other great masters, now and before, directly to our lives, by believing in magic and miracles and wonder, both within our own lopsided selves and in the world around us, by not thinking we know it all, by not thinking we know much at all. There is a deeper kind of knowledge that is not found in books. This is the kind of knowledge that Taoists call knowledge learned from inside out. Remember, in some of these chapters, he talks about giving up learning and putting it into your troubles, meaning giving up intellectual learning and putting it into your troubles. About in the world of learning, people take on more and more information. We live in the information age. More information is jammed into our head every day. But in the world of Tao, we let go of something every day. So that the really deep learning remains, the learning that we need to know how to live a good and fruitful and healthy and harmonious life. That's the kind of learning that resides in our heart. And the other kind of intellectual learning resides in our head. And so the really important learning is what we feel, what we learn, what we hold in our heart. There is a deeper kind of knowledge that is not found in books, even Tao Te Ching book. It is found in the deep experience of our own heart minds. It is found in the space between the in-breath and the out-breath. It is found in being awake and aware of everything around us, the grand unfolding of the world in front of us and of the world within us. It is found in the direct experience of our being awake and alive to each unfolding and flowing moment, of being willing and open and filled with a sense of adventure and joy, of being willing to work on ourselves and also celebrate ourselves. It is found in nature and in music and in dance. It is found in our spiritual nature as well as our animal nature and our Tao nature. And the last part says, when the fairy Tinkerbell was on the edge of death, we were told that if we believed hard enough in magic and fairies and all manner of fancifully serious life forms, she would get better. You'll remember this from the book, right? Or the movie. I don't know about you, but I shut my eyes and believed with all of my might that fairies and magic do exist on some plane or planet, in our own world or that of another, but exist they do. And then she was saved, and then I was saved, and then we were all saved. So I really, in this course, I want to share with you my ideas, my experience, the ideas and experience from this ancient book that is alive, just as much alive today as it was when it was written 2,500 years ago. And we'll be starting the class on the 15th, Wednesday, April 15th. We were going to start a little earlier, but I haven't been able to really promote it yet because all my astrologer friends said, don't promote something while Mercury is retrograde. And I've already run into a few problems with that. So I decided to just wait, be quiet, be still, and wait so things can unfold more naturally. because that's usually when things turn out the best, right? There's the old story of the farmer, the Chinese farmer. His plants aren't growing as crops, and his plants are growing as high as his neighbors. So in the middle of the night, he goes out and pulls on all the plants so they'll grow taller. And then when he goes out the next morning, they're all lying there dead. It's when we try to force things. You know, one of the most important principles of Taoism that we'll go into is called Wu Wei, spelled W-U-W-E-I, pronounced Wu Wei. And Wu Wei directly translated means not doing. And what it actually means is not overdoing, not forcing, not trying to force something into a shape that it doesn't fit in. It's like when we're a little kid and we've got the little thing with the square blocks and the round blocks and the triangle blocks, and we're trying to get that square into the whole one, and we're hitting it with the hammer, and it's just not going in until hopefully someone takes pity on us and says, "No, little Solala, the square one goes in the square hole." And then you don't need the hammer, it just slides right in, right? We have this experience in our life where we want something to happen. We want to make it happen. It doesn't seem to be fitting, and we're sure if we just push on it, if we just bang on it harder and harder, it'll somehow fit. And then we realize, oh, we're just trying to fit the square peg in the round hole. And if we just move over a notch and find the square hole, it fits in just beautifully, right? This happens in our life when we make decisions for their life. We would like things to happen a certain way, and it doesn't always happen that way. And sometimes we need to wait. Sometimes the best thing to do is to do nothing. You know, I work a lot with the I Ching or the I Ching or I Ching, however you pronounce it. And I see it as this great wheel of life. And where are we on that wheel of life? Are we on a place where we have a lot of support from the spiritual realm, where we can go forward and start new projects and make things happen? Or are we in a place where we don't have that support? And this is a time to be still, to wait, to gather our chi, gather our energy, so that when it comes up, and then it's a better time to move forward. And we can move forward with grace and with that support from the spiritual realm. You know, in the last paragraph here of this little article, I was sharing by practice, by going deep within, by meditating, by dwelling in the silence, by applying the words of Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, and all the other great masters, now and before, directly to our lives, by believing in magic and miracles and wonder, both within our own lopsided selves and the world around us, by not thinking we know it all, we know much of it. My voice is coming out really strange on my computer. It's not sounding strange to you guys, though? Okay, it's all distorted when I speak. Hi, new person.
Hi. I think I have my time zones mixed up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Hey,
So
Marilyn.
I'm going to share one chapter of this book because I've been doing a lot of intro stuff, but I wanted to at least share one chapter, and this is one of my favorite chapters in the book. And I have this great bookmark here of this little boy who's a little shoe shine boy that I met in Lhasa, Tibet, when I went to Tibet in 2006. And you can see he's just the cutest little guy. So that was my bookmark. Oh, and so this is the line that I was referring to earlier. This is chapter 20, by the way. Give up intellectual learning and you will have no worries. He talks in another chapter about the difference between head knowledge and belly knowledge, right? It's a kind of knowledge that's just in our head. Sometimes I'll go to these Taoist conferences, and people are delivering papers, and they translated something, and they're sinologists, and they can read classical Chinese, but they've never done a Taoist practice. They've never meditated. They've never done Qigong. They haven't done Daoyin or Taoist yoga. And so their understanding is all up here in their head. It's an intellectual understanding. And Lao Tzu talks about the most important kind of knowledge is belly knowledge. I talked about the learning that resides in our heart and also the learning, the knowledge that resides in our belly, or we call the Dantian. Agreement and disagreement, are they really so different? Good and evil, are they really so far apart? What others fear, must I also fear? This nonsense is unending. And then he has this really beautiful description of himself, or a description of many of us may relate to this as a feeling we've had, an experience we've had in our own life. Other people are happy as if they are at a great feast. In spring, they merrily ascend the hills to see the sights. I alone remain tranquil and unmoved, like an infant who doesn't know how to laugh. I am exhausted with no home to return to. Other people have much while I possess nothing. I seem like a fool. Other people are clear while I alone am confused. Other people are clever while I seem dull. I feel lost at sea, tossed about on the wings of a storm. Everyone else has things to do or accomplish, while I appear thick-headed and stupid. Yet I am different from the others because I am nourished by the Great Mother. I just love that idea of everyone else is accomplishing things, doing well in their life, making lots of money. They seem like they really know what they're doing. And sometimes we feel like we're not really clicking with society. We're not clicking with that idea that you have to go out and make money and you need to get accomplished and you need to have the perfect marriage and the perfect home and the perfect, everything in your life, that you feel like you're just sort of being tossed about by the waves of the sea. Yet, we have that connection to the Great Mother. That is another term for Tao, the Great Mother. That goes back to what I was talking about, the shamanic Wu times. So I have a little Great Mother meditation that I want us to do here. And here, first I want to start with a little quote from my teacher, Hua Ching Ni. He says, before a human being enters the physical plane to become individualized, he or she resides in the cosmic womb of nature. In some respects, this is analogous to the experience of being a fetus in the womb of one's physical mother. While contained in your mother's womb, you were one with her. Whatever your mother experienced, you also experienced. In the process of birth, you became separated from your mother. Your direct communication to her was cut. Similarly, before being born into this plane, we were one with nature and thus with universal law. After being born into the physical plane, we must rediscover universal law and restore our innate spiritual ability. By so doing, we reestablish our direct connection with nature, the cosmic mother of the universe. So we're going to do this little meditation now. And then I'll have a few minutes at the end if anyone wants to ask a question. So you all know how to unmute yourself, correct? Well, you can't answer that because you're muted. Okay, so this is a meditation. Sit down, begin your deep, slow Dantian breathing. So this is about breathing, of course. We're going to do what's called natural breathing, which is as we breathe in, our abdomen expands. As we breathe out, our abdomen contracts. We breathe in and out of our nose. We close our eyes and we see with our mind's eye. So we spend just a few minutes, say 9 deep breaths. Slower, deeper, the better. Tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, which connects the Dumai and the Renmai. Don't try to feel anything special. Don't try to see anything special. Feel your navel just above your lower dantian as being connected in a very real and energetic way to the Great Mother of us all. Feel an energetic umbilical cord connecting you to your source, source with a capital S. Allow yourself to begin feeling a flow of energy between you and your original mother, what Watching Me calls the cosmic womb of nature. Sense this. What this mother feels and experiences, you also feel and experience. Because we are living in what Lao Tzu calls the valley spirit, the cosmic womb of nature, the great mother. And it's like we're floating in this amniotic fluid in the great mother, like we did in our earth mother. But this mother, when we come into the post-heaven stage of life, we get disconnected, just like when we disconnect from our mother at birth. But while we can't go back into our mother's belly and reconnect, we can reconnect with her emotionally, but we can connect with our original nature, with the cosmic womb, with the great mother. Draw deep sustenance from this connection. As you experience this state of being a baby in the womb of the great mother, feel how well you are fed by her. Draw on her strength and fill yourself with her power, the most powerful force in the universe, the great mother force. Know that you are always connected to her, whether or not you are even aware of it. Know that as the child of the great mother, you are always and forever supported and loved. Feel how her wisdom guides you and protects you. Don't be afraid to be different from the crowd. Don't be afraid to appear as a fool to others for not racing after the things the rest of the world races after. Don't be afraid to feel lost and tossed about on the winds from time to time. You can always remind yourself to reconnect to the mother at any time. She is always there for you. So as we sit and we feel that connection from our lower dantian going all the way out into the great mother, the cosmic primordial womb of Tao. And we feel that love, that support, that energy, that chi, that guidance, that intelligence that comes from the great mother, that enters us through our belly. In one of the chapters, Lao Tzu talks about the sage empties her mind and fills her belly, which is usually mistranslated as not reading books but eating a lot. It means letting go of intellectual learning and filling your belly with real knowledge. And our belly is where we feel that connection. It's still through our navel. We still have that navel. We still have that connection to the cosmic womb of nature. And to spend some time, to spend 15, 20 minutes with this meditation when you have time, to really feel yourself connect to the cosmic womb of nature, to the great mother. This is something that can really sustain you, especially if you're having a hard time in your life, things aren't going well, and you need that support. That support is always there for you. When you feel you are finished, and this is how we finish a lot of these kinds of meditations, we bring our palms together in front of our face, and we rub our palms together 36 times. And then place them over your eyes and breathe in the warmth of your Lao Gong, the warmth right up into your eyes, all the way into your brain. And then you can rotate your eyes 9 times in one direction, 9 times the other. And get up down your face a little bit, kind of waking yourself back up. So I'm open to any questions, feedback at this point. If anyone has any, you know how to unmute yourself. I know the woman on the right there is already unmuted, so if you have anything you want to ask or share about the meditation or what I've been talking about, I know I get going and I just go because I'm still so enthusiastic and excited about this stuff than when I first discovered it so many years ago. I see a question.
Going to tell when you offer the course, are
Yes.
you going to use that book, and are you going to have an outline for people who are participating
Yes,
so that they
we're going to use this book.
okay?
And I'm not going to try to get through the whole book in the 6 weeks.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh, I hope her house isn't on fire or something. I won't try to go through the whole book in the 6 weeks. We'll go through it leisurely, and we'll talk about the ideas that are on the chapters, and we'll do the practices together. And some of the practices are standing qigong kind of practices, as well as meditation, as well as some lifestyle practices. So yes, this is the text we'll be using.
Beautiful. Marilyn, is everything okay at your place?
I think I had a time warp. I thought it started at 6:30 and I
Oh,
was going on early. I apologize.
no worries. But I just saw you run away and say like something was wrong. So.
Oh no, I think I have that book. I have that book. I've got the book.
Oh, okay.
And when you sign up for the class, if you miss a class, like some of the people here, we will have it on YouTube in a special VIP section, which I will send you the link to so that you can watch it and stream it. I will also probably be sending some support material also to you, emailing you support material like this article about do you believe in magic and other things that will be helpful for you too to understand it. So that'll all be an extra part of the class. So it doesn't. If you want to talk to other people about this, you don't have to already be an expert in Tao Te Ching or in Taoism or Qigong or any of these things. You know, that we're all beginners on the path, and so that's how I like to teach. You know, beginner's mind with the Zen master Suzuki called beginner's mind. We all have to keep that beginner's mind so that we stay fresh, right? And the minute we think we know something about something or that we become, God forbid, experts, you know, then we lose the thread. And so the thread starts and then you follow the thread. It's like following the breadcrumbs for Hansel and Gretel to find their way back home. You know, all these masters, Lao Tzu, Zhuangzi, all these other Taoist masters, in present times and ancient times have left us these crumbs that we can follow. That's what Tao is a path. We're following the breadcrumbs of these ancient teachers who share stories and practices and part of their own wisdom, their own life wisdom with us, so that we can learn how to apply this stuff in our own unique way to ourselves. Because, and I'll talk about this more next time, but the term in Taoism for an enlightened being, like a Buddha, enlightened person, is Zhenren, which means authentic person. And it's when we learn how to be authentically ourselves and express ourselves authentically, that's when we become closer to really being children of Tao, children of the Great Mother.
That's beautiful, Solala. I really enjoyed your meditation that you did tonight. I love that concept of the umbilical cord being connected with our original source. I think that is just absolutely beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. That was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was. I immediately went into a totally relaxed, comfortable state. That, of course, I'm running home from work and stressed to the max. So this was just.
Oh, good.
It was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those kind of things you can drop once you learn them and practice them a little bit, experience them a little bit. You can drop down into them very quickly. You know, some people feel like to meditate, if you're not meditating for 2 hours a day, then you're not being on the path. But really, it's more about the quality, not the quantity. And for many people, meditating for an hour, they only actually achieve about 15 minutes of true peacefulness somewhere in the middle. It takes them 15, 20 minutes to calm down, empty their mind, and then they reach that state of deep, deep relaxation. And then they start losing track of it and start coming back out. And that's fine, but the more you do practice these kinds of things, the quicker and deeper you can go. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, you know, we have so many tools. All these breadcrumbs are also tools that we get to use. You know, as I spoke earlier, this book is often looked at as a book of philosophy or even statecraft, but it's actually a manual for self-cultivation, because in Taoist practice, we call spiritual work self-cultivation. It's like we're planting these seeds, these spiritual seeds, in a garden within us. And then we're watering these seeds and we're taking care of the seeds and we allow them to grow and sprout and then fruit. And then we enjoy the fruits of our cultivation practices that we may have done for many years or perhaps even many lifetimes. And so we're like farmers. We're the cultivators of our own beautiful garden, the Garden of Eden. What they talked about in the Bible is the Garden of Eden, where intellectual knowledge is not a problem. We're not eating of the fruit of the book of good and evil, of knowledge and not knowledge. You know, we're still in that beautiful Edenic quality of our being, connected to the Great Mother, on this path of Tao, on our path, discovering what our path is, following the breadcrumbs, which is something I just thought of tonight, by the way, as I was talking. Following the breadcrumbs and seeing where they lead. And some people are led in a whole different direction than others. Some people are led to become an acupuncturist or a Qigong teacher. Other people are led to just using that in their own family life. Some people are apply it to their music life. You know, it's people think, well, then if I'm following this path of Taoism, I have to be a teacher of Qigong or Taoism or a doctor or something. And it's really, the main thing is, how can you learn and express who you are in the most authentic way that you can? Then you're being a genuine, then you're being an authentic person. Then you're being a man or woman of Tao.
Thank you.
Yes. So I know it's a little early, but I wasn't really sure how to approach this first introductory thing. Hope I've given you a little bit to look at and to think about. And people can look at this. And remember, we're starting, and Leslie, my dear, dear friend Leslie, will be sending out some more information about we're starting on the 15th.
Okay.
So unless anybody else has any feedback or questions.
No, thank you. I'm off to the Buddhist
Okay.
temple.
Thank you all for coming, and all of you people that are looking at this later, whenever you are. Thank you for coming and sharing this endless, timeless moment with us all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Solala.
Thank you.